with that, I would like to turn this over to our President and CEO, Kay Englund.
Well, good morning, everyone. I guess technically it's afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this important training today. We especially want to thank our presenters. I also see several board members and committee members that have joined us today, as well as valued professional advisors. So again, just thank you for this opportunity to share with you today. Our foundation truly does value and appreciate the continued support and advocacy that each of you do for us as a community foundation, and most importantly, how you help to lift up all of the valued nonprofits that serve our community to really strengthen that charitable sector in our region. So again, thank you for that. Over the last few months, our foundation really has been privileged again this year to be a part of some important change and supporting our community, not only with grant making, but also community leadership. Many of you probably know and are aware that we did launch 14 different COVID response funds across our region to help meet some of those unmet needs, and as our nonprofits have been responding. And then also most recently, we've launched a racial equity fund as we expand our role to end racial inequality in our region. And lastly, I would just invite each of you to join us virtually this year for our Celebration of Community event, which will be held on Friday, November 6th at 5 o'clock. We'll be sharing a message of thanks and some exciting news regarding some grant making that we're working on and that is underway in our community. So those are just a few quick updates. I'm going to turn it back to Terry so we can get back on with our important programming. But thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Kay. I do just want to give another quick update on our Endow Iowa tax credit program. As most of you know, there's a $6 million limit to the tax credits each year, and we are allocating for 2021 tax credits. Currently, there is about $2 million left in tax credits, and we do anticipate that those will be expended before the end of 2020. So, just as far as for planning, if you have clients and or donors who are looking for that 2021 tax credit, it will be going probably before the end of the year. So something to keep in mind. So moving on with our program today, I'm going to introduce both of our speakers. I'm going to start with Stacie Brass. Stacie is an accredited investment fiduciary and certified pension consultant with more than 25 years of experience. She works with businesses with plan design, record keeping concerns, evaluation of investment menus and strategies for communicating valuable pension benefit information to employees. She's a graduate of University of Northern Iowa, a past president of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, Cedar Valley, an alumni of Leadership Investment for Tomorrow, former board member of Junior Achievement, and a past chair of the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. That's first Stacie, and then we have Todd. And Todd was the Manternach as a founder of Premier Advisors LLC, now Accel Wealth Management, and a financial advisor with 3 decades of experience in financial services. Todd helps clients with an extensive background in risk management, investment planning, and tax reduction strategies. Outside the office, much of Todd's time is spent with his wife, Sue, and their 4 children. As a family, they enjoy many outdoor activities and support each other's sports and music talents. Todd and Sue are actively involved in their church, school, and the local Rotary Club. Stacie and Todd.
Thank you, Terry. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm seeing the names up here, and I know many of you, and again, appreciate you taking a few minutes today. Kay approached me about this a few weeks ago and said, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? And, I think my first reaction is, well, gosh, what information would we have to share that all of you don't already know? And so I took a minute to think about it a little bit, and I'm grateful that Todd and I have been partners now for just coming up on a year. and knew that he had particular expertise in this area. So like any good partner, I approached him and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this with me? And that quickly turned into Todd got ready for today, and I got to show up and say a few words. So to give you a glimpse in what it's like to be a partner with me. But I want to thank Terry and Kay for their work putting this together today and giving us the opportunity. I've had an opportunity to work closely with both of them, and they truly are a valuable part of not only the community foundation, but just the community at large. So thank you for everything you both do. So Todd, you're advancing the presentation, correct? I don't believe we're sharing that just yet, are we?
Yeah, I don't have I'm not sure who's putting the presentation up.
Yep, I will do it right here. See, this is all of us learning how to live in a technology-friendly world. All right, so we'll get that part done. So hopefully everybody can see that. My screen is not green. Can everybody see my screen, the title page?
Yeah, Stacie.
Okay. Perfect. So we're really going to take, legacy planning, charitable giving, philanthropy, whatever word you want to use, and talk about it in the context of how can we use this concept to build stronger relationships with our clients. And as I mentioned, in the value in having partners, this is part of my world that Todd has helped me open up. Is, I've been doing this a long time, 20 plus years, 25 plus years, but am I doing all I can to really understand and maybe even help my clients understand what might be important to them? So that's what we hope you take away today. The good old FINRA disclosure. So by way of agenda, we're going to talk about really three things. How can you offer more than whatever your particular discipline might be, whether it's portfolio management, tax consulting, legal work, whomever's in the room. What are some of the questions that you can ask to maybe have a better understanding of your clients' motivations and values, and then truly deepen your relationship with them by really getting to that intent? What is it that is important to them about money and about accumulating wealth? So what's the benefit of being a philanthropist? Well, obviously there's some economic value here, right? There's some tax value. My family has a family fund at the community foundation, and it was driven a couple of ways. And we'll talk about this again in a little minute, but we have a daughter with special needs. So we had a passion and a heart for maybe helping families like ours. But, I've been a financial planner my whole career, so the tax benefits are not lost on me. But scientific evidence also shows that philanthropy has benefits beyond that, greater overall happiness, lower stress, better physical health, and a heightened sense of connection to others. So if those are things that we believe individually, how might we be able to bring some of those same benefits to our clients by opening that dialogue? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd to take us through part of the presentation. And those of you that know me know that I will have a difficult time staying quiet the entire time. So I'm sure I'll jump in at some point.
Yeah, one of the nice things about the slide prior to this, one of the things that we have an opportunity to do with some of the charitable giving and educating our clients on that is to help them provide more joy in their life through the giving that they can do. And that's, for some reason, I don't have control of the program. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about some of the options when we look at charitable giving. One of them is a donor advised fund, which is a charitable investment account. It's for the sole purpose of supporting charitable organizations that you really care about. When you contribute cash, securities, or other assets to the donor advised fund, either a public charity or the community foundation, you're going to generally be eligible to take an immediate tax deduction off of that contribution. Those funds can be invested. You receive some tax-free growth out of it, and then you can recommend grants to virtually any IRS qualified public charity that you want. Gifts to donor advised funds with the community foundation, they're also eligible for the Endow Iowa tax credit, which was talked about a little earlier. Okay, I can't seem to get the thing to move. All right, thank you. So when we look at the Endow Iowa credits, you know, when you give to the community foundation, whether that be in cash, real estate, grain, appreciated securities, or just outright gifts of retirement assets, the gifts must be placed in a permanent endowment fund at a qualifying organization such as a community foundation. The endowment funds are intended to exist in perpetuity, and the spend rate from the funds may not exceed 5% annually. The tax credit of 25% gifted are limited to $300,000 in tax credits per individual and up to $600,000 of tax credits per couple. The eligible gifts will qualify for credits on a first come, first served basis until the yearly amount or the yearly limit has been exhausted. Fortunately, you can carry that over into the next year, and those gifts can actually be carried over up to 5 years. So by going into the community foundation, you're going to get some Iowa breaks as well, which is kind of nice. Okay, another way to contribute is through a private foundation. This is the type of charitable organization that's typically established by an individual, family, or a corporation to support charitable activities. You have a board of directors, you have trustees that oversee the private foundation, and they're responsible for all the charitable contributions, managing the investments, all the assets, and making grants to different charitable organizations. They're also responsible for filing all the tax returns and any of the other administrative reporting that's needed through the private foundation. There's really no minimum in creating a private foundation, but really, if you want to make it worthwhile, you want the setup and all the administrative expenses to make sense, they really recommend that the minimum private foundation should be at least $5 million. So for the average person, we're going to be looking at a lot of other ways to get involved in charitable giving than through setting up a private foundation. I know we're not working with the Bill Gates type clients, so we don't have anybody setting up private foundations. We're looking at a lot of the other. One method, another way of creating is a charitable lead trust. This is a gift of cash or other property that's put into an irrevocable trust. A named charity receives the income stream from the trust for either a set number of years. And depending on how the trust is structured, the donor can also enjoy some current income, gift, or estate tax deductions on whatever is donated into the trust. After the income stream period is ended, the remainder of the asset will go back to the non-charitable beneficiaries. So this is really good for somebody who wants to create an income stream for a charity, but have the remainder interest go back to their family. The next one is a charitable remainder trust, which is kind of the flip side of the charitable lead trust. It's a split interest giving vehicle. It allows you to make contributions into the trust. You're also eligible for partial tax deductions based on the trust assets that will be passed to the charitable beneficiaries. You can name yourself or someone else to receive the income stream for a set number of years, no more than 20, or for the life of one of the non-charitable beneficiaries. Then the named charity is going to receive the remainder interest once that income or the trust has been terminated. This page here just kind of gives you a real quick summary of the three main ones that I talked about: the donor advised funds, the private foundation, and the charitable lead trust. If you look at these, you can see what types of organizations that the charitable vehicle is going to support, whether they have growth potential on it, whether you can make non-cash donations, and are there any income tax deductions available for contributing into them. And then any tax on the investments that are inside the trust. Can you support charities anonymously? Can you name successor trustees? And what really are the considerations for setting up each of these types of charitable giving? The donor advised funds is really is somebody who's looking for a turnkey giving solution. You want low cost and the potential to grow tax-free over time. Probably one of the easiest ways to set up any type of charitable giving that's going to last for a long period of time. The private foundation, as I mentioned, is pretty good, but it's really for those large very, very wealthy clients that can put $5 million into an account to set it up. Charitable lead and charitable remainder. Just kind of remember between the two of these, the charitable lead trust generates income to the charity with the assets going to the heirs. The charitable remainder trust is a flip. You're generating income to yourself with the asset going to the charity at the end. And then cash is just for somebody who's giving outright, donating to the charity of their choice, whether that be a church or any other IRS qualified charitable organization out there.
And this is just kind of one of those, I don't know what everybody's experience has been on the call, but I think very few clients understand these options. I know, when we started doing our own planning with Kay and the Community Foundation, I was aware of charitable giving. I had a fairly high level, but it wasn't even being in financial services. I had really spent a lot of time there. So just fully understanding the pros and cons of all of these different techniques, I think as we master our craft and provide that expertise to clients, there's value in that. And Kay, I don't know if you want to chime in there, but you meet with lots and lots of donors a year. What level of understanding people typically come in with?
Well, I think sometimes people don't know what the options are, right? That's probably the most basic. So I think this chart is a really good one. And certainly, we love the donor advised funds, right? But we actually have worked with some individuals that have converted their private foundation back into a donor advised fund because they felt like it was a little bit more extra work than what they had planned on in having a private foundation. So we're flexible.
Very good. And I don't know, Terry, if you mentioned this, but we're also happy to entertain conversation or questions, but I think she's holding those, or Jake is holding those to the end. So
yeah, this right here is a piece that we use to kind of help find out what our client's intent is with their money. It's a real simple way, just putting their total assets at the top. And then when you look at that and you look at the assets, there really is only a few places that your assets are going to go. Either your intent is to spend it all, and maybe that's your goal. Every once in a while, we'll hear somebody say, my goal is I want to spend every dime I have, and I want the last check I write to be made out to the funeral home, and I hope it bounces. If that's the case, that's fine. We'll help you spend your money. That's not a problem. But most people, they're going to want to leave money to their heirs, to their children. And then there are those that are charitably inclined. And this is just a great way to find out and start the discussion on, have you ever thought about giving to charities? Is there anything out there that you really, really want to do? And finally, if you don't do any planning, there's always a possibility that the IRS is going to get their hands on some of the money. So depending on whether you want to leave it to heirs, leave it to charity, or a combination of those, let's see if there's a way we can structure things and try and keep the IRS out of it as much as we possibly can, and benefit either your heirs or the charity as best as possible. What we're going to talk about here is just a couple different scenarios that can come up, and what are some of the solutions or options that you might want to use to take care of that. So the first scenario is you have somebody who's over 70 and a half. They're taking the standard deduction. They like to give annually to certain charities out there. We probably run into this scenario the most. Somebody's given money to their church, or they've got some organizations that they want to give to on an annual basis. They're not real big on leaving any type of legacy. They just want to figure out what's the most efficient way to do that. And one of the best things is to utilize the qualified charitable donation. And this is where we're utilizing their qualified assets, the IRA. And we're taking that tax-free withdrawal out of the IRA and sending it direct to the charity. This can also be used to satisfy their required minimum distribution. So there's time, and you can give up to $100,000 a year out of your IRA to a qualified charity. So if you got clients that they've got plenty of assets, they want to start liquidating their IRAs, give it away, give it to charities, do the qualified charitable donation. It's a great way and a great asset to use for that. So there was a couple changes that went into effect with the qualified charitable donation, and it has to do with some of the changes that came about with the Secure Act that went into effect of January of this year. The one thing it did not change, it didn't change the qualified charitable donation age, which is 70 and a half. Now, this is one area where I run into a little bit of confusion with some people. Some people think it's the year you turn 70 and a half, just like it is with the IRA, what used to be the IRA withdrawals. No, you have to physically be 70 and a half to do a charitable, qualified charitable donation. Now, one of the other things that changed is because they moved the minimum required distribution out to age 72, and they now allow people to continue to contribute to IRAs. As long as you have earned income, you can continue to contribute to an IRA after age 70 and a half. If you do that, that impacts how much the charitable, qualified charitable donation is tax-free. So in the example here, if you have a client, they 2 years in a row, age 70, 71, they contributed $7,000. So they put $14,000 into their IRA. At age 73, they decide to send $20,000 to a qualified charitable donation. Well, how much of that $20,000 is actually tax-free? It's $6,000. So what the new rules state is you're going to be taxed on any amount that you took a deduction for after age 70 and a half. So in this case, they made two contributions totaling $14,000. That $14,000 is going to be taxable, even though it's going to the qualified charity. The $6,000 is still going to come out tax-free. So that's a little snare they kind of put in that impacts that qualified charitable donation just a little bit. Another note to remember is your qualified charitable donation cannot go into your donor advised fund. Scenario 2, you've got somebody who has highly appreciated non-qualified assets. They're close to being able to itemize, but they don't quite have enough deductions. They'd like to look at a more longer-term giving strategy. So one of the solutions is you create a donor advised fund, transfer the highly appreciated assets into the fund. You receive a deduction based off the fair market value of the asset. The donor advised fund can sell the asset, no capital gains tax. You've got a lot more money there available now to charities, and you can start making annual gifts out of the fund. Very simple way if somebody's trying to get money into a charitable donor advised fund, and they've got a lot of highly appreciated stock that they've been owning for a long time. Avoid that capital gain, get a really nice fund set up, and start impacting some charities. I'm gonna let Stacie talk about this one, being she's so involved in it.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we made the decision a few years ago to open our own donor advised fund, not only to accomplish some goals that we had personally as a family. My husband and I have both been philanthropic our entire lives, and we did want to pass that on to our children. So we have a 20-year-old and Lindsay who's 14. So in considering our different options, we met with Kay a couple of times, and this was before I think I was even maybe involved on the board, but I think this was the driving factor. It was that way to share that legacy with our children. We've been contributing now for a few years, so we're at the point where we're able to actually make a donation. And so, you know, we want that to be a process. We're going to sit down with our children, talk about what sort of an impact we might be able to make. And I think it's just really cool. Plus, and Kay, you can always correct me if I'm wrong here, but when my husband and I are gone, our children will still have the ability as the second generation to have input on how that money is allocated, which I think is fantastic. So it just creates, you know, not only is there some financial benefits, but I think it just sets up a really neat opportunity to share a legacy with our children.
All right, let's look at another scenario. Let's say we've got a client, they have a desire to provide for a charity, but they still want to pass the assets to their beneficiaries. So it may be a situation where you've got a client who's very charitably inclined, but maybe their children aren't doing all that well, and they really don't want to pass the money to them till after they're gone. And they'd like to have an impact on some charities. They're close to being able to itemize, they don't have enough deductions, and they're looking for a long-term giving strategy. This is where you can look at the charitable lead trust. Potential benefits such as income tax deductions or estate or gift tax savings on the assets that ultimately are going to pass to the beneficiaries. You have annual gifts going to the charity for a set period of time, and then you have the residual value going back to the heirs. So it's a nice way for somebody that has a strong desire to benefit charities while they're alive. They'd like to set something up that has a little control over how it's going to be gifted, but still not disinherit their children. Next scenario, we've got a client who wants full use of their assets while alive, but they'd like to benefit charities at death. The option here is to design beneficiaries with tax savings in mind. Start with qualified accounts. So let's say you have clients that they really don't want any long-term strategy, but when they're gone, they want to send some of their assets to a charity, or maybe they do want to control it after they're gone, and they're going to send it into the donor advice fund after they're gone to do some long-term planning. So either way, but typically when you're going to look at this, you want to start with the most taxable account to the beneficiaries as possible. So many times we'll have clients that we're doing planning with, and maybe they've designed their will and they're leaving assets to charities through their will, and they're not pinpointing that it should be the qualified assets. In a lot of cases, you're better off to go to those IRA accounts and name the charity the beneficiary of the IRA account. Why would you want to do that? Well, your heirs, they're going to pay tax on those qualified accounts. The charity's not. So if we want to try and cut the IRS out of some of this, one of the best things to do is leave those qualified accounts to the charities. After you've gone through the qualified accounts, if there's more assets they still want to use, start looking at the non-qualified annuities. This is another vehicle that's going to create tax for their heirs. But again, it's not going to create any tax for the charity. So you can leave it outright to the charity, or you can have it go to either like the community foundation or to a donor advised fund. Another thing you can do is if somebody's done an awful lot of US savings bonds, you can designate in your will that you want the charity to receive the US savings bonds, and the estate's gonna get an exemption from the interest earning on those US savings bonds. Unfortunately, you can't name the bond to go direct to the charity, but you can do it through the will, and you can get some tax breaks on that. So when we look at this, direct estate gifts to the community foundation can establish an endowment fund, which can provide a legacy of support to your favorite charity. So if somebody wants that long-term legacy planning, just name the community foundation or a donor advised fund to receive those assets, and you can create a legacy very easy and actually cut the IRS out of a lot of it.
And we apologize to any of our colleagues from the Internal Revenue Service who might be on the call. Todd, your audit will be coming around here shortly. But this is another.
As long as it's legal, we're okay.
That's right. That's right. Within the bounds of the law. But this is also kind of one of those, maybe if we have some younger advisors on the line, or maybe people that are more portfolio management centered. If you're managing a sleeve of a client's money, maybe it's their IRA, and you start with the conversation about, how much do you want to retain, how much goes to your heirs, and how much goes to a charity or the IRS. Imagine the quality of that conversation with a client to get into some of those assets you don't own or you don't know about. You may not know about that, non-qualified annuity that's been there for 20 years and nobody's ever looked at it. So it's just another way to get into and deepen that relationship with your client and provide value to them beyond just what you might be getting paid to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, and we find that typically in a lot of cases, the older the client gets and they realize they're not going to be needing their money, they tend to become more charitably inclined as well. But sometimes you'll have a scenario where a client really wants to benefit a charity after they're gone. They're not ready or willing to give up the money yet, but if they don't need it, they want it to go to a charity. So what's one of the options that they have? Well, you can look to a non-qualified annuity as an option to provide that. The advantage that the annuity is going to give the client is if they don't need that money, it's going to continue to grow a tax deferred. So they got the potential for tax deferred growth out of it. Depending on how the annuity is structured, it can leave a lot of access to the client as well. Some of the annuity products out there today have some enhanced death benefits on them as well, where if it's paid out as a death benefit, it can be worth more than what the contract value actually is. You name the charity as the beneficiary, so at death, the charity is going to receive the proceeds tax-free. So it can either go direct to the charity, or you can establish a donor advised fund, establish something through the community foundation, and truly create a legacy when you're gone. So the annuity can be a good vehicle for that client who really wants to delay that gift, and they still want that money in case they might need it. So it's a pretty good option for that as well.
And this is why I know I historically have had a bit of a bias against annuities. You know, I think I sort of grew up in the industry that was more pure investment planning. And, you know, if this is a space, if you haven't dug into it, there are some annuity contracts today that can do some really, really cool things for clients. So just another one, and maybe as you look at your own practice, if you've got that bias like I had, is maybe keep an open mind. Now, like anything, there's still some not very good contracts out there, but there's also some really, really good things that can then help clients solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, and this is another way to legally not have taxes paid on that money as it goes direct to the charity. Now, if you've got a client who really is passionate about benefiting charities, and they're really interested in doing some charitable legacy planning, and their health is good, life insurance is a great way for them to leverage the value of their assets and make it worth an awful lot more to the charitable organization, to their donor advised fund, or to the community foundation in setting stuff up. Some of the options that you have is you can transfer the existing life insurance policy into a donor advised fund or to the community foundation. You name the fund or the charity as the owner and beneficiary of the account. You're going to see a fair market value income tax deduction. So basically, you're looking at the cash value of the contract is going to kind of be used to determine what type of income tax deduction you get off of that transfer. You can also create the donor advised fund or through the community foundation, and the fund can actually purchase life insurance on you, and then you donate the premium into the foundation or to the fund, which gives you a tax deduction when you make that donation. And typically, if you've got a couple utilizing a second to die life insurance policy, is going to get you a much larger death benefit than if you look at an individual policy. So this is one way to take pennies on the dollar and turn it into some really strong charitable legacy planning by utilizing some life insurance, and especially with that second to die policy.
Kay, I see you nodding. I'm curious how often, or maybe are planners and folks, donors doing things like this? How often do you see strategies like this in place?
Yeah, I mean, we own several life insurance contracts on donors. And so, you know, just to agree with what Todd said, I mean, basically we don't pay that premium until we receive that charitable gift to cover the premium on behalf of the donor. But just most recently, I've had a couple conversations with planners that were actually looking at purchasing, you know, to Todd's point, actually purchasing second to die contracts because they felt like there was enough wealth there and health there and charitable desire that was a really good option for them to even maximize more their charitable impact. So it happens. It's not necessarily a weekly thing, that's for sure, but it still is a really good option.
Right. And you know, we've talked about this in our firm, and, you know, you can sort of get that misconception that those 70-year-olds aren't going to be able to buy life insurance. But if you haven't spent much time in that space, you'll be surprised. The underwriting and what you can do with a second to die policy is quite a bit different than just individual insurance on an individual single life.
Yeah, for a lot of companies, when you're doing a second to die, they're just wanting one healthy person.
Mhm.
I've had situations where an individual who could not buy their own life insurance, we were able to get second to die life insurance because the spouse was extremely healthy. And they'll underwrite it based off of that. So there's a lot that can be done, especially if somebody is really charitably inclined. You can really leverage a lot through the life insurance planning. Another option, I remember years ago when I got in the insurance business, there was a big push out there to get people to give 1 or 2% of their life insurance to a charity.
Yep.
So even it's not that somebody has to transfer a policy to a charity or have the charity of the foundation take the policy out. You can do split beneficiaries and just name part of it to go to the charity and do it that way. So there's a lot that can be done with beneficiary arrangements on all types of accounts. It's just, again, going back to that initial slide where we showed the client's intent. Are you going to spend the money? Are you going to leave it all to your kids? Or are you going to leave some to charity? That is one of the best pieces to start the conversation about charity and truly find out what their intent is, because most clients don't know. And it gets that conversation started, and it's going to allow you to dig deeper into what's the best thing I can do to help my clients with their charitable intentions. Okay, I like this quote by Winston Churchill. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. So as advisors, whether we're attorneys, financial advisors, insurance agents, I think it's one of our jobs or our duties in our profession is to help our clients with their giving intentions. I think it's important for us to educate them on what options are out there. I think it's important for us to help them set up the plan. And I'm going to go back to the IRS, trying to create as much tax efficiency in their giving as we can. Get as much tax-free money to their heirs, take some of those that are going to avoid tax, leave it to the charities, establish those foundations, establish those donor funds. And just like Stacie talked about, it gives your client joy, it gives them well-being, it benefits their health. Those are all things that we can do in our profession to help our clients. So with that, we're pretty much wrapped up, ready for questions if you want to hit the next slide.
The other thing I'll just add on to that real quick. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but I think in this year in particular with COVID, with stress on the economy and stress on our well-being and stress on our health, we're finding clients keenly aware of their mortality. I think everybody's just a little bit closer to thinking about, gosh, would my family be taken care of? Would my charities be taken care of? So despite everything that's gone on in 2020, people are keenly aware of wanting to have a good quality financial plan in place and make sure those people are taken care of. So it's a good time to be having these conversations with your clients. So like any good continuing ed, we may be done a little early. I don't know, Jake, do we have any questions? Or I don't know who's monitoring that for sure.
No, we do not have any questions at this time. We just had one quick question about sharing the slides, and we'll be sharing the recording and the slides with everyone in a follow-up email. So.
Yeah, and I would say the same. If somebody, we're all in the same industry, and we're all trying to do the same thing. So if anybody has a question for Todd or myself that you'd like to pick our brains about or run something, we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, actually, Stacie, the next slide has our contact information.
Oh, how clever of us.
There we go.
I have longer hair now. But that's
yeah, I was noticing that photo doesn't quite match anymore.
I'm getting old. I have to hang on to those younger photos as long as I possibly can.
And if anyone, there is a quick question here from Scott. He says, any thoughts on legacy planning and the cut down on the stretch planning for IRAs due to the Secure Act?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Secure Act kind of eliminated that stretch IRA. So I think when we're having that discussion with clients and letting them know that, you know, there's going to be more tax ramifications for their heirs. And maybe your client wants to look at utilizing the IRA for charitable giving at that point, or possibly taking more money out of the IRA and applying it to a second to die life insurance that could either be used for the heirs or for charity, and creating a tax-free benefit for the heirs or a much larger benefit for the charitable organizations as well. So yeah, I do think there's a lot of planning opportunity because of what happened in the Secure Act.
And Scott, I'm guessing you know this too, but I still don't think a lot of clients, first of all, I will say it was a technique that I haven't used very often in my career. But I think there's even still a lot of folks that don't even know what has changed. So that all kind of starts with education for our clients and helping them understand that here was a fairly valuable strategy that you don't have access to anymore. So time to revisit that. Very good point.
Yeah, especially clients with really large IRA accounts. Their heirs are going to get hit pretty hard when they can't stretch that anymore. So I do think it creates the opportunity to discuss what they should be doing with that money.
And I was just going to add, Todd, I know that you're totally accurate in stating that the IRS prohibits a donor from putting their IRA, RMD, or the balance into a donor advised fund, because it's perceived that donor then gets both the tax benefit and potentially maybe not be maximizing the charitableness of that. That's not even a word, the charitability of that fund, because they would control the grant making from that fund, and they might not do that, right? But get the benefit of the tax efficiency, as you called it. So but a donor can put their RMD into an account with a community foundation, which we call a nonprofit fund or an agency fund. So for instance, I know we've got some donors that have actually established named funds that benefit a charity with their IRA contribution. We had that happen for Habitat and I believe the food bank, where those contributions can come in, they can be named, but they're in the control of the nonprofit, not the donor. So those are really good strategies too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages of working with a community foundation over going to, say, a Fidelity donor advised fund. I think the community foundation can give some options that you can't get elsewhere.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, if anybody has other ideas they'd like to share, not just questions, I mean, we're all here to get a little smarter. So if you've got something else you want to share, absolutely.
We can't see very many faces, just names right now. So
yeah,
feel free to turn on your cameras if you'd like to and share ideas, feedback, solutions.
I hope they didn't just log in for the CEs.
Well, we know that Scott's there because at least he typed in a question. Come on.
That's right.
Yeah.
God, I'm surprised you were able to stay on mute this entire time.
I know it. And Aaron, I bet you have something to add. It's
That's enough.
you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Scott.
Well, I'm here and I've been paying attention, and I thought you guys did a great job. And I agree. I think there's, there's probably more change ahead as well. So I think, these sessions are valuable, and nobody has a corner on the market on good ideas. And it's good for us to continue to share ideas and see how we can help each other.
You.
Aaron, did you have something to add? We see you anyway. No? How about, Aaron Lyons might have something to add.
Well, I was just going to say, Kay, I hope that you weren't calling on me, because I was counting on other folks to bail me out. A great presentation, and thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
thanks,
hopefully,
guys.
our time is our most valuable asset. And like I said, that was our biggest reservation in doing this is wanting to believe we had something of value to add. So we hope everybody took at least a little nugget away that can allow you to function more effectively in your own practice and more importantly, do some good for your clients.
This is Mike. I'll share too. I think this is well done. And just as you said, Stacie, I'm familiar with a number of these things, but there were absolutely nuggets throughout. And I really like the way, Todd, how you packaged the scenarios as well. It was really succinctly positioned as, oh, okay, that fits that case example, and here's some options. So thank you very much for pulling this together and your time to deliver it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the comments.
And I would just add too, I mean, Terry and I and our other staff are always happy to be a part of a conversation with you alone or you and your client. We feel really fortunate when we can be in that circle of influence and help together kind of determine what would be the best next step for that client. And certainly we appreciate any of those opportunities. And I'm seeing several of you on here that we've had those kind of meetings with, and it's a real joy to be a part of those and to see the donor, the client, see the joy and what's been determined and really maximizing their ability to give both charitably and usually it's a pretty strong family component in there as well. So we're happy to be a part of those conversations.
Thanks, you guys.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, Aaron.
Terry, what do we need to do to wrap
Yep.
up?
We're just going to wrap up here. Again, thank you, Stacie and Todd. It was really great. I think some really good information, and we will have the slides available. Just a reminder about the CFP credits. I know some of you did it, but if you do need the CFP credits, please put your name and your number in the chat box, and I will get that reported. The CLEs will be coming via an email back to you with that number for your self-reporting. So just a reminder about that. The only other thing, we just, we're almost to the end of 2020, yay. But we will be doing another series for 2021, and our kickoff is in January. We don't have our date determined quite yet, but we'll be getting that out, and that will be our economic outlook from Dave Smith with Marquette Associates. And so as soon as we get the date set up for that, I have a feeling it's going to be a virtual meeting. Again, I don't think we'll be doing live meetings in January, but you never know. I'd say plan on Zoom, and we'll be sending out some information about that. So again, thank you very much for coming, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Stacie and Todd. Great job.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.